Hey everybody, it's me, Zach. This is Potato, and welcome back to our channel. Hey everybody, it's me, and I'm back again to discuss another exciting episode of the 1,000 Pound Sisters, TLC's critically acclaimed, future Emmy-nominated reality television show following the lives of Amy and Tammy Slaton and their various many other family members. Like, a lot. Like, we met even more this week, just randomly. So, like, I'm so excited to get into this week. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of interesting things that I felt like happened that are worth talking about, things that I want y'all's opinions on, and I'm excited to just jump into it. But before I do that, I did want to share, and I obviously don't know how to go about sharing this in the video because, well, you'll understand once I explain, but, you know, I've had a relationship to some extent, like, I'm not besties or anything, but I've, like, DM'd many times with both Amy and Tammy, and after last week's episode, if you recall, Amy talked about a book that had a story about her grandpa dying from being fed antifreeze by, like, maybe her uncle or something. And I don't know how to show you this outside of just, like, I don't know, maybe holding up my phone. But Amy full on sent me a picture of every single page of the book that was about her grandpa dying from antifreeze. And I was just like, Amy, this is so sweet that you would literally go and take photos of all of the pages that were about your grandpa. And I should probably go read it. I haven't had the time to. I'm also more tempted to just get the actual book itself because, like, I mean, it's a lot to, like, go through all of this. Also, don't mind Poe. He always thinks he wants to get started up here and then always ends up leaving halfway through because he is peaceful there up until the point that I start talking, essentially. So yeah, we still might have to go read the old antifreeze murder from the book that she was talking about, but I just thought that that was so sweet that Amy even thought to reach out to me about it. So episode 6 starts off where last week's episode left off, which was Amy at the hospital upset because Michael tested positive for COVID. And since last week's episode aired, I think both from the comments and also just me thinking about it in general, I've had a lot more questions about this situation that have popped up for me. Like, for one, why didn't they give him a test prior to them all going to the hospital to begin with? Maybe they did. Maybe we didn't see that. Maybe they did and it was negative. You know, especially like rapid tests and things like that aren't always like positive the first time you take one. But also just like, what are the general testing protocols for filming, considering that like they're going in and out of hospitals a lot on this show for various different reasons, and maybe not even just hospitals, but even like Tammy's rehab facility, the like OBGYN that Amy went to at the beginning of the season. And a lot of people in my comments also pointed out that the way the show presented the timeline is that right before Amy went to the hospital, she was at this big family gathering with a whole bunch of other people. And granted, it was all outside and it was probably a lot safer than if they were like inside a cramped, close space. But like, I think there are a lot of questions about like, how seriously are they even taking COVID protocols? I mean, they're also in Kentucky, where I assume things are much different than how people approach it in Chicago. And even in Chicago, there's a lot of people who don't like care about it at all anymore, even if they should. So like, I in general have a lot of questions following this whole part of the show, the episode, etc. And Amy does answer actually the part about why Michael does end up taking a test.
Later that night, Michael started feeling bad and had to take a COVID test and ended up with COVID.
And I have to say, like, after 3 years of this shit, after 3 years of COVID, how are we mispronouncing the name of it? How are we calling it something that it's not? And it wasn't just a fluke or like a one-time accident, because she says it 3 more times.
I'm just mostly worried about Glenn getting COVID. Like, what if something dire happens to Glenn? What if he has COVID? Can he survive it? What's going to happen?
And she also even says it again like that later in the episode. So I don't know what what Amy is hearing when people say the word COVID. But it's not going from her ears to her mouth. But just so you know, just like every great Slaton before him, Glenn is good at providing the poo-poo content.
Just wait for his discharge papers and all that good stuff. And then we're hitting the road. He just pooped.
So anyways, Amy and Glenn get discharged from the hospital, and I have just a little bit more COVID questions to ask because they're going to stay with Amanda, and so Amanda comes to pick them up with her son, and she and her son show up like fully masked. All the employees are masked. Amy is masked, and then once we get to watching them actually in the van with Amanda, nobody's masked anymore. And like at this point, I'm not here to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do. I'm just thinking like logically, what was the point? Outside of like maybe they were forced to do it because of the hospital, but it's clear that none of them inside the van are all that concerned. But like, what's the point of them wearing masks to go pick Amy up if they're all gonna get in the van and immediately take them off? And I will say, just to be clear, like again, I'm not lecturing anybody. I actually feel like, you know, there's lots of confusion over what you should or shouldn't do regarding masking protocols, COVID protocols, etc. And I think that is in general because there's so many mixed messages from so many different places, whether that's like the government, the media, people in our lives who claim that they are experts on everything, even though they have no medical degree. But logically, it just didn't make a lot of sense to me, especially considering, you know, what the timeline of the show tells us is that they were all just recently together anyways with Michael, so they all could potentially be exposed or tested positive for it. I'm assuming they tested negative for it and that the show made them test and they just didn't show that on the air. But like, I just have a lot of questions. It doesn't add up for me. Shit is not fucking adding up for me. That's also to say that I feel like the more I think about it, the less likely it is that that barbecue actually happened before they went to the hospital. I'm just saying, like, everything timeline-wise on this show is like Frankenstein together. So I'm gonna throw that out there, but there's a lot of other stuff that just like doesn't make a lot of sense to me, if we're gonna be honest with you. So anyways, Amanda does pick them up, and throughout this whole episode, she proves to be a very good sister, in my opinion, a very thoughtful sister, a very concerned sister, and I appreciate that about Amanda specifically. And when she's driving them home, she mentions that she's a little bit nervous to be driving the precious cargo that is the newborn baby Glenn. But no worries, she's also worried about Amy's fupa.
Amy, hold on to your fupa.
We also have a weird conversation about how Amy says she's looking forward to eating a cheeseburger, like she hadn't been eating a cheeseburger all the time that she was pregnant. And Amanda points out that that's like also a little bit weird because like if there's any time to justify eating a cheeseburger, it's gonna be when you're pregnant. But either way, they arrive home to Amanda's house and Amy's just tired in general, wants some rest, etc. And the next segment opens up with a burp from Tammy at the rehab facility.
Excuse me.
What you over there coloring, Tammy?
Birds.
And we get to see Tammy doing some coloring with her friend Nathaniel, and she says that she keeps her hands busy so she doesn't want to eat.
Keep my hands busy so I'm not wanting to mind tricks. I'm a genie. Oh wait, not a genie. A magician.
And we also hear from Nathaniel that Tammy has actually inspired a lot of the other folks that are at the rehab facility because she's worked really hard and she's accomplishing her goals. And Tammy is honestly a little bit surprised by that.
I never thought I'd be inspired. Not expired.
Thankfully, Tammy is not expiring. And I understand probably why she would be surprised by that. I mean, up until this point, Tammy has not done anything inspiring on this show. And I hope that she takes that into account and appreciates that and, like, really continues to go off of those vibes of, like, hey, like, other people are inspired by me. I'm doing the damn thing. I did that. Because Tammy's really done a whole turnaround when it comes to her behavior, her actions, her attitude on this show. But during this scene, we also get the heads up that we will be seeing Tammy go see Dr. Smith during this episode, and she also has to see a whole bunch of other specialists, like a lung specialist, a cardiologist, and what was the other one? I have it listed somewhere else in my notes later in the episode. But basically what you need to know is she meets with a lot of doctors and has plans to meet with a lot of doctors, okay? That's what you need to do. And once I get to that part of my notes, I'll remember who the third doctor was. I will say she's in particular concerned about getting approval from the therapist and also through getting approval from the lung doctor, because it's very clear at this point, if you haven't been watching, maybe it's not clear, but if you've been watching, it's clear that Tammy has a lot of lung issues. So we learned that Michael is finally COVID-free, and Amy and Glenn and Gage all get to go home to be with him. What is confusing with the timeline in this situation is that they show Amy, Gage, and Glenn all going home with Amanda, and they throw in this little clip to suggest that Gage had already met Glenn in the hospital. And so apparently that happened at some point before Michael tested positive for COVID, but the way that they presented Michael testing positive for COVID in the last episode was that, like, Amy had the baby and then found out that he was COVID positive. And so I don't know where in the timeline they fit in time for Gage to meet the baby. It doesn't make a lick of sense to me. The timeline is so wonky, and it's also just like so sloppily done. Like, you can so easily notice that they're just like splicing shit together that it's kind of irritating. Because also, just so you know, this is like not unique to 1,000 Pound Sisters. A lot of reality television does this. I'm just saying this as a reality TV connoisseur. But it's usually a bit more seamless in other shows I've watched. It's less noticeable. And I feel like if you're even paying like a little bit of attention to this show, you're gonna notice that things aren't always adding up or don't always make a lot of sense. And it seems kind of like lazy on the editor's part to me. But I don't know. Maybe that's par for the course for TLC. I don't watch a ton of TLC reality TV outside of the 1,000 Pound Sisters and Besties. Anyways, let me stop complaining about that, okay? Because I still like the show regardless of that. Amy mentions to Amanda that she's happy to be home to see Michael, but can't wait to see her bed even more.
He was like, well, I miss my husband, but I think I miss my bed even more. And that makes me feel awful. And you just busted out crying. I'm like, damn it, girl, you got to get it together. Damn, it's okay to miss your bed more than you miss your husband.
Which, like, honestly, in some cases, relatable. Whenever I've gone a while without sleeping in my own bed, there's nothing like getting home to get cozy in your own bed. But I would also just like to get cozy in my own bed next to my partner, you know what I'm saying? And no worries, this new Prince of Pooping, Glenn, is doing a great job at being a new member of the Pee Pee Poo Poo family.
Yeah, I miss him a lot when he's been gone. This one, and that one in there.
He's pooping again. On the way here, we had to stop and make a trip because somebody pooped everywhere. So I got to wash this car seat.
I seriously continue to be amazed by how this family has somehow branded itself as a pissing and shitting and farting family. Like, y'all have made that your whole entire personality. And, like, honestly, it's working for you. You're on season 4 of your own reality show. So, like, go off, sis. And this is our first glimpse into seeing a world where Michael is not a helpful partner, husband, father, etc. Because Amy gets home and she's like, this house is still messy. Like, what have you been doing? It would also be one thing if Michael had, like, extreme symptoms of COVID, but he says on the show that, like, the worst it got was a bad headache. And so Amy was like, what have you been doing for 10 days? Well, I've been staying somewhere else. Like, what has been going on, bestie? What are you doing? Now I got 2 kids here, and I'm still recovering from my C-section, so, like, what the fuck is actually up. I mean, she didn't say all those words. I'm saying those words for her. That's me reimagining her feelings, but like, you get the point. Anyways, the next segment all happens, I think, at some cousin named Cindy's house. Again, we are just introducing new Slaton family members every episode. This episode actually has 2 new family members for some reason. And I don't know that we ever actually saw a Cindy, which is why I'm confused about, like, Chris said the name Cindy, but I don't know that we ever actually met a Cindy. You know what I'm saying? But I'm thrilled that there's an unending supply of Slaton family members so that if any of them ever get tired at any point, they can easily be replaced. Interestingly, this whole segment seems to be mostly about how overwhelmed Amy is by just like being a brand new mom again, having an infant and a toddler, talking about how little sleep she's getting between caring for both of them. And yet TLC still has the audacity to have them sit around. And because, like, listen, I don't think that like Misty, Amanda, or anybody is just like, if there weren't cameras there for TLC, would be bringing all these things up. So TLC had the audacity to have Misty start prodding Amy about if she started eating right.
So, have you been trying to get back on your diet?
Yeah, but when I can eat, you know how babies are.
Mind you, they're talking about this. They're making Amy talk about all of this while they're literally surrounded by like food, by barbecue, by barbecue sides, like surrounded by food. And you have them start talking about this at the family barbecue. And it's like she's a brand new mom, and as we find out, she's literally getting no help from Michael. Well, little help from Michael. Like, what exactly do you want her to do immediately in this moment? Okay, like, I get it. She probably still needs to prioritize her health. We all do. But, like, is this the time or place? You know what I'm saying? Like, does everything at all hours of the day have to be about her weight? They even had a moment where they had Amanda giving feedback to Amy about the food she eats.
My 2-year-old eats better than we do.
Well, but if you're feeding your 2-year-old good stuff, then that's what should be going into your mouths too.
But then when Amy pushes back, all Amanda has to say about the way she eats is that she's been cutting out the snacking.
My diet's okay, but what about yours?
I have literally cut out the snacking. That's the biggest thing that I've done. Now, some of the other things that I drink, not necessarily too healthy for me.
And again, this is also why I just need all of these individuals to worry about themselves individually, with maybe at this point the exception of Tammy, who clearly needs all the support she can get to stay on track. But like outside of that, like between Amy, Misty, Amanda, Chris, they all just need to worry about themselves. And they also show Misty talking about how she cut out her little sodies and she's down 5 pounds. Like, oh my God, doctors must hate her. And on top of all of that, on top of that whole ass mess, I just want you to know that literally for like the 3rd or 4th time in one episode, we get footage of Glenn pooping.
Are you pooping again? People are eating.
Right?
But yeah, outside of those things, this segment is mostly about Amy getting irritated and frustrated and feeling bad about her abilities as a mother because Gage starts crying, but she's trying to feed Glenn. Gage won't stop crying. And I do have to say, I was getting heated, annoyed at Michael because Michael wasn't doing jack shit. Amanda was sitting there trying to help Amy with both of the kids, and they just kept showing segments of Michael just
Okay. He is not having it.
And Daddy ain't doing. I'm over here hot as hell. I just recuperated from surgery.
like, get off your ass and help your wife. Like, there's even a point where Amanda literally passes Glenn off to Chris to hold so that she can go help Amy with Gage. And it's just like, Amy is clearly struggling and needs help from her partner.
I'm like trying to choose which one to give my attention to at that point in time. How am I going to do this? How am I going to be a mother to 2 boys and not hurt one of us' feelings? How am I going to differentiate from giving my time just to Gage to both of them now?
And thankfully, Amanda's ass calls him out on that to Amy.
You're not supposed to be doing by yourself. You are married and have a husband, and he is supposed to be being a dad too.
And I just know Amanda is sick of his shit. I just know. And in fact, I'm sure she's thinking, I was married to your brother. I know how this shit fucking works. I just know that's what Amanda was thinking. And honestly, of all the siblings, I think Amanda's probably the most emotionally intelligent one of all of them. She probably, because she's like older and understands her siblings probably the best out of all of them. But she clearly understands and is meeting Amy where she's at and trying to help her and be supportive. And I just want to say this again, but I really do believe Amy is doing the best as she can as a mother with what she's got. And while I don't like to see Amy upset, I feel like this is the most vulnerable and genuine this show has been in a while. I do think that this show, as opposed to like the besties, is better at giving us like honest, real moments like this. But I appreciated getting to see Amy just like talking about the struggles of being a mom, because it was like specifically not about her weight or related to her weight. I mean, they did occasionally try to make it about that. Like I do remember her saying at one point, like, it's hard to be like overweight and chasing after 2 kids. But so much of that was unrelated to her weight. Like, having a partner that's not pulling their weight, not me saying the word weight. I didn't mean weight like that. But having a partner who's not doing their part of the responsibility of being a parent is probably really difficult, and it's not related to anybody's weight, right? Like, just having Michael help her out would be so much easier for her, such a big help, and he's not doing that. So I appreciate getting to see something on this show that was real, that felt genuine, and that also wasn't just like, oh, this is all about Amy being fat. But I will say, it was about all of that. It was not weight related until TLC makes Chris segue this segment into being about like exercise and working out.
So I'm hoping some exercise and activities will set the tone for everybody to relax and start having fun again.
And you know what actually would help lighten the mood, TLC? If Michael would just get up his ass and like help Amy, or at least console her. Like, one of the things that was so irritating about the whole situation is that he didn't even get up to like console her, help her out. She's like literally crying at this family barbecue. And who gets up to help and support Amy? Amanda. Amanda goes over to like talk to her about how she's feeling and her emotions. And Michael just continues to sit there and eat. So anyways, men, am I right? Like, you can't live with them, can't live without them. Well, I could live without them. She could live without them. You could live without them. But anyways, Chris is down enough weight that he feels confident about riding a horse without there being any weight limitations. He used to ride horses as a kid before he got overweight, and he really missed that experience, and he was so happy to be back on there, and I'm happy for him. But all of this does lead to a conversation from Amanda wondering what it would take to get Tammy out to the horse ranch.
What do you think it would take for us to get Tammy out here?
A forklift?
Bitch, you ain't even got to be like it.
I do have to say, it would be wild to see all the things that hopefully Tammy will start doing once her health is in a better place. Like, I'm really looking forward to that for her. Just because, like, even Chris, who is much smaller, not nearly in the same health condition as Tammy, is going out here and doing all these things that he had wanted to do in the past but couldn't, and I can't wait to see what Tammy does with that. So the next thing we see is Tammy getting ready to make the road trip, the trek to Lexington to do all of her like pre-op appointments with the various doctors that I mentioned earlier, and also eventually to see Dr. Smith as well to see if she's approved for weight loss surgery. It's also so clear that Tammy's like attitude and opinions and things like that have extremely adjusted and changed.
It's been a long journey, hard, all the ups, all the downs, but it's worth it. It is worth it. I'm worth it.
And I honestly really love to see it. And also, if you're wondering what the buzzing was at the end of that clip, it was Chris calling her, and there was a segment there where he was like just checking in on her because he knew she was getting ready to make the trip. We find out that she's getting transported in an ambulance to Lexington because she's worried about the safety of like her family transporting her there. She has mentioned in the past, like even when Amanda and Misty went to visit her, that she was worried about going out with them because they wouldn't know how to handle like cleaning out her trach if something got caught or something like that. And so she just felt better getting medically transported by professionals. And it is a 4-hour long ride, and I think it's reasonable that she would be concerned about those things and maybe even a little bit anxious, because the last time that she made a major trip, like road trip, it was to go to the rehab facility, and that's when she ended up in a coma in the hospital. And so she hasn't left the rehab facility since she got there. And I think that, you know, that would be very nerve-wracking, I think, to anybody in that experience. And TLC tried to up the ante by showing some clips of this, like, really deep, crunchy cough that Tammy had. And it was a little scary, honestly. It reminded me a bit of when I was like a little kid and my mom smoked and I would get either bronchitis or walking pneumonia every year. She stopped smoking eventually, not related to that. Like, I wish she had stopped because of me, but she stopped for other reasons. But anyways, that's besides the point. It just reminded me of that, and it sounded atrocious and awful. But a nurse came and helped her out, and I think that TLC just included it to kind of like raise the drama of the episode. And she eventually ends up arriving in Lexington. They drop her off at a hotel where a family friend home health nurse is there to help take care of her. Unfortunately, it wasn't Tisa. I would have loved to see a little cameo from Tisa. I hope she's doing well. Tisa, if you're out there, we send our love. We get a little clip of all of the siblings traveling to Lexington to go see Tammy. And this is another instance where they threw in another Slaton family member just like out of the blue, because Chris and Brittany had their adopted grandson with them. So there really is just like a new Slaton in every episode, or multiple, like I said, for this episode. We find out that Tammy isn't necessarily feeling well. They seem to think it's mostly just because she just made that long trip, and they're really hoping that she can push through. And spoiler alert, she does push through to go to all of her various doctor's appointments so that she can meet with them to find out if she's going to get approved for weight loss surgery. That then takes us to her appointment with Dr. Smith, Daddy Dr. Smith, who is live and in the flesh. I feel like previously this season so far, we've only really seen him on video calls with Tammy. So it was good to see Daddy Dr. Smith in person, in the flesh, there with the family. So he goes over each of the different doctors and what they had to say about Tammy's health. The blood doctor had some concerns about past blood clots that Tammy's had. In particular, she's had a pulmonary embolism in the past, and mentioned that bariatric patients tend to be more at risk for having blood clots after surgery. But the doctor suggests that they just have an aggressive approach after surgery and keep her on blood thinners for a while after she gets done getting the surgery. She also met with a cardiologist who did say that she was at risk for getting anesthesia and even just the surgery in general, of having like a heart issue while those things were happening. But they felt like the risk was more serious if they didn't do a surgery, like the risk for another heart situation was more serious if they didn't do a surgery at all. And the lung doctor, which was the one that they were all concerned the most about, did say that there would be a 39% chance of a pulmonary issue during bariatric surgery. But similarly, they felt like it was more important for her to have the surgery than it was for them to take in that 39% chance into account. On top of all of that, we also find out that the therapist has approved and that Tammy has been putting the work in privately off camera. Dr. Smith is like, all of these different entities have approved, and honestly, again, I am like just an emotional mess these days. Like, I cry when I watch almost anything, I feel like, these days, but I was emotional seeing Tammy's response to finding out that all of the doctors were good to go with her getting surgery.
You are approved from a cardiac standpoint.
Yeah.
It's scary, isn't it? I mean, let's just be honest. This is real and it's scary.
I'm not worried about that. I'm more relieved.
And we find out from Dr. Smith that she has been approved overall through everything by Dr. Smith, and seeing her family so happy for her was like very heartwarming as well.
Let's do surgery. You're approved for surgery.
Oh, check mark. That's it. That's it.
I think I'm in shock.
So I'm very excited for Tammy, and obviously I think a lot of us who have followed her either just through my channel or if you follow her on TikTok or things like that, I think we've all known that she was gonna get the surgery because she's been on social media and she really has made even more improvements than what you see currently where we're at on the show. So very excited for Tammy, so proud of her. She's also very sweet and did reach out to me and ask me like what I thought of the show this season, and I let her know that I've been enjoying it, and I also let her know that like folks in the comments of my videos have been so much more supportive of her this season, and that I just like really appreciate that, because y'all know I have been a Tammy Slaton apologist for a minute, and so I'm glad people are coming around, and I'm glad she's also being so successful. Next week, it looks like Amy is trying to film another fake YouTube video. We get to see Daddy Proctor back on the 1,000 Pound Sisters. You know, we're not a stranger to him over on the Besties, but on the Sisters, we haven't seen him in a minute, and Amy is gonna have a virtual appointment with him next week. And I think we're also going to get to see Tammy actually having surgery next week, so that's also exciting. I will say that Tammy had mentioned in a TikTok that I shared in one of my other recap episodes that they had already filmed 8 episodes of the show, and then there was going to be a second 8 episodes of the show, and this is episode 6, so there's like 2 more episodes in this first half of the season, and I'm curious if we're like gonna take a momentary break and then come back, or what's gonna happen, but I did just also want to put that on your radar, that like I feel like chronologically in real time, we've pushed through a lot of stuff this season. Anyways, I really enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you did too. And if you're brand new to my channel, I do weekly recaps of the 1,000 Pound Sisters every week. So make sure to subscribe and click the bell button so you get a notification so you can see when I post about it again next week. I hope you will leave me a comment, hit like, click share, follow me on all my lovely social media, and above all else, have a great day. Bye!